What's up and welcome back. I'm John Stark from ActiveMovieGuy.com, your favorite blind film critic. And today, I'm going to take a look at Rust. This is a film that has garnered a lot of attention because of really unfortunate circumstances. It's directed by Joel D'Souza, and it is currently available on demand. And it does not have audio description, although considering the production, I'm not entirely surprised that they chose not to spend more money on anything having to do with Rust. It's important to note that the profits from Rust are going to Helena Hutchinson's family. So if you feel at all a certain way about Rust and you would like to help Helena Hutchinson's family, maybe that would sway your decision and your choices one way or the other. So your money's not going to Alec Baldwin, it's going to Helena Hutchins. If you I'm not going to break down and litigate the entire thing, but it's been widely talked about, so I think everybody knows what Rust is now that it's out. It is dedicated to Helena Hutchins. And also, when I rented the film from the Apple Store, I sat through all the way to the end, and there was this little message from Joel about finishing the film and why they chose to, and it explains sort of the angle for that. So, it does kind of feel like an oddity in cinema because you're watching a film that somehow got from point A to point B, and along the way there was a rather major fumble in terms of filmmaking that would have stopped many another film. We never got that Allman Brothers film. They never had enough principal photography or anything to be able to push that film out after a similar death on set accident shut that film down. Russ, I guess, had enough shot that they were able to. I don't know what was shot. I can't imagine how awkward it would have been to return to set with Alec Baldwin, especially with Joel D'Souza being the director. There are two credited cinematographers for this, so somebody else had to step in and obviously finish out the little bit of her assistant had to fill in for her afterward. So what is Rust? Click like and subscribe, by the way. It is actually a film that stars a little kid, which is amazing because this film has had a lot of bad press thrown at it. And it actually stars this young boy, Patrick Scott McDermott. And he plays this young boy who is accused of murder and sentenced rather quickly in a town that's sort of set in the West. And which is why it looks like a Western, why there's so many guns on set, is because it's a Western. And he's sentenced to, to death pretty quickly, and his, they're pretty adamant that, that this is wrong, and his grandmother, his mother's gone, his parents are gone, so he's being raised by his grandmother, and she's trying to lobby for, and also, again, no audio description. This is all I picked up on my own. She's saying that, I'm going to appeal to a, state judge or whatever. She kind of thinks very little of this judge in this backwater town type of thing. And he's like, I am a state judge. I was appointed 27 years ago. All right, whatever. Frances Fisher is in here playing the grandmother. She's actually excellent in this movie. Just gonna call that out and say those two performances, I really enjoyed them a lot. Patrick he's young enough to be believable as a kid, but he's also mature enough to be able to handle the material being thrown at him. He reminded me a lot of Haley Steinfeld in True Grit. And I'm not kidding. I actually thought the kid did a pretty good job, which is, it's so bad. And I hope the whole thing around Rust doesn't like slow the trajectory of his career, because he's actually a nice find in terms of an actor of his age. I'm not really familiar with anything else he has done. I think this might be a debut for him. Rust is actually the name of his grandfather, which is Baldwin's character. And then, truthfully, and I'm also, again, not here to just badmouth Alec Baldwin, he's a little bit miscast here. As a blind person, I will say I heard a lot of Tommy Lee Jones coming out of Alec Baldwin. I've heard some other people compare him to Kevin Costner, and kind of like what Kevin Costner's been doing in like Yellowstone and Horizon and stuff. I actually kind of heard a lot of Tommy Lee Jones coming out of him. Like he's trying to do a certain accent, and it came across as very Tommy for me. But he plays sort of that gruff, no nonsense. At first, he doesn't even tell the kid he's the grandfather. He just comes in and rescues him. And it takes like forever. He's like, "You're gonna follow me." He's like, "Who are you?" Eventually, we find out that his name is Rust, and he's eventually tells the kid that he's the grandfather. This movie is 2 hours and 18 minutes. And as much as I want to love and accept everything that Joe D'Souza is, just because of everything that he went through with this, that's a long runtime for this movie. It doesn't necessarily support it. It kind of feels like it lingers. At the same time, it's also the kind of movie where audio description would have helped a lot. Because again, it's a sweeping Western. It's not necessarily dialogue heavy. There's dialogue, so I was able to go from person to person to person, but there are a lot of like supporting characters that sort of come in and out. Names I hadn't seen in a while, like Jake Busey, Xander Berkeley, Abraham Ben-Ruby, are all listed in the credits. The main one is sort of Travis Fimmel, who's playing this guy that's like tracking down Rust and the kid, and has been sent to sort of finish the job. I actually thought he did a pretty good job too. All things considered, this is not a bad movie. The weird thing here is that Baldwin just feels so out of place. I would say that regardless. Like, there's something about Alec Baldwin that feels very like he's city folk of him. He doesn't really feel country. He doesn't really feel inherently like he's of the West. Like, put him in a Western, he doesn't feel like he's the cowboy. He feels like he's the guy that comes in from the city to open up the bank, or some other sort of like wealthy man who hires the cowboys to do things. He doesn't actually feel like he is the cowboy. Just in general, the general vibe you get from Baldwin, that's why his career isn't littered with Westerns. It's just an odd casting choice from the beginning. And I know he's a producer on the film, so obviously he wanted to do a Western, but he's the weirdest casting choice here, and they actually did a pretty good job for everyone downstream. There was like one character actor who I thought was doing a little bit much, but I don't know who that was or what role, but there were some line readings where it was a little hokey, but it was so brief. That was just such a small character. It's one of those characters that kind of just like stumbles in and has like 3 or 4 lines of dialogue, and it's just the intensity levels on like a completely different plane than everybody else. But otherwise, it's just Alec Baldwin, man. The whole time I was like, why does he sound like Tommy Lee Jones? He's trying not to be the fish out of water here. So they just kind of are on this journey and trying to avoid bounty hunters, and there's a bounty, and people are trying to capture them, He's just trying to keep his grandson alive while also alluding to the sins of his past, and also how he failed his family, but he won't fail his grandson. Those kind of movies. That's what this is. The score is lovely. I actually kind of liked Rust. I really did. I think a lot of people are going to come into this with a preconceived notion to dislike it because of a thing. And I don't think that does everyone else any justice. I'm seeing good performances. I'm seeing a really beautiful score that I loved. I think, other than the fact that the film is it should not be 2 hours and 18 minutes, I think the film is really well directed by Joel D'Souza. He just has a little bit too much and too many weird supporting characters in there. It gets to become sort of like a little full of itself with a necessary, like, there has to be a little bit more effective way of telling the story instead of, there's one time where they meet these guys and they talk in this other like rhythm that is just sort of like out of place for the movie. That kind of didn't really work for me. So like there are a couple choices that I could sit down and be like, okay, well, if you had to cut, maybe that would be it, or this would it. There are a couple things where it's like you could trim this. I'd also like audio description before I officially say any of those things. Because again, there could be something that's just in not being audio described to me, and I'm like, why is that even in there? So, yeah, giving Rust the most focus that I can give it, being a blind film critic, and also with the full respect to Helena and her family. I was a little worried myself when I heard about Rust coming out. I was like, oh God, Rust is coming out. And then I heard that the profits are being donated to Helena's family. It has the blessing of Helena's family. There's absolutely no reason to not watch this. They're asking you to watch this. So they believe that her work this is her final work, and that she would have wanted people to see it. And so all of that is out there. Now my question to you is, I made a post yesterday while thinking about Rust, and I said, what do you think? Best Cinematography nomination for Helena Hutchinson. Is it possible? And I think a fairly competent publicist could get a cinematography nomination for Helena Hutchinson. I know that sounds crazy because it's Rust, but I feel like the narrative is there. I feel like there are people who want to support her. And it's also insanely interesting because the other cinematographer that replaced her is also female. So it'd be 2 female cinematographers being recognized for the work of Rust, potentially, in a dual nomination. So if they did get nominated, also, cinematography is the one category at the Oscars that has never had a female winner. It's the thing that I always point to whenever somebody tries to have a conversation with me about, I have some other hot reasons why, when people are like, oh, well, we should gender neutral the categories. I'm like, actually, I think we should do more non-gender neutral categories, but that's just me. Because as much as they try to diversify voting bodies, it really seems like we're not quite there. We're still in 97 years of Academy Awards hitting firsts. The first of blank, the first of this. And they don't even seem like they're hard firsts. And after all of these Academy Awards, cinematography has been around for all of them. It's not an added category like animated feature. So there's never been a female winner, ever, in the entire history of the Oscars. There aren't even that many nominees. There are only like a handful of nominees over the years. So I feel like it's the kind of thing that could happen. And I think that's my hot take for the day, is Best Cinematography, Helena Hutchinson. So, uh, throwing that out there for the publicist to talk about for Rust. It could be an overswing. It absolutely could be an overswing. But, like, what are we going to give it to? You know, that random Netflix movie that they get in every single year where it only gets nominated for cinematography? I'm good with giving that nomination spot up. I don't need whatever that movie's going to be. So, hilariously, like Maria, where it only gets nominated for cinematography and not Angelina Jolie's performance. So, yeah, I mean, why not Rust? Why couldn't this be the one nomination Rust got? So, be the right time. So, yeah. That's... Should you watch Rust? Yeah, I think you should. If you're blind, it's hard for me to recognize that because, again, it doesn't have accessibility, so you're just going to have to choose for yourself. Obviously, I do everything so that I can stumble through things and tell you whether or not you will stumble through it to save you the money and the time, and you will stumble through this. But if you feel like there's something about this production and you just have to know what's on the other side of it, like you just have to go through the coats to get to Narnia, you know, or there's something that's just bugging the hell out of you and you just have to know what's at the end, you know, then the best thing that I can say is that this has the full weight and blessing of the family, and the profits are going to go to the family. So, and director Joel D'Souza was also shot at the same time, and he's still alive, and the work is still out there for him, and he should probably be recognized as well for the work that he did on this movie. So, like, there are reasons to watch this. And also the other people in this film who worked on it, like the whole fucking crew, all of the other roles. You know, that's the reason when people are like, oh, well, you watched that movie, but it has so-and-so in it, and so we're not supposed to watch that movie anymore. I hate that. I hate when people are like, oh, it has Armie Hammer, so we can't watch that movie anymore. And it's like, there are like 1,000 people that worked on that movie. You're going to tell me because Armie Hammer's in it that you're not going to watch the movie so that you can appreciate the work of, like, all of the costumers and all of the, you know, the whole production design team and, you know, all of the other supporting casts, the extras. I mean, like, there's so many people who work on a movie that to define it by one person is not a thing that I like to do regardless. And I don't hate Alec Baldwin, but he is also the worst thing about the movie, which is just sort of an ironic thing. I think I've given him plenty of praise in other reviews to counterbalance the facts so that people don't think that I'm just also on here to be like, fuck Alec Baldwin. I don't know if that's the angle you're coming at in a Rust review. I just don't. He's miscast. This actually should be Tommy Lee Jones. You know what I'm saying? Like, this really should have been Kevin Costner. It should be somebody that Alec is trying to be instead of Alec. Like, yeah. So, I don't know, maybe Alec could have been that judge at the beginning that we never see, you know, just like, and then like leave it at that. So, and then somebody else could roll off with the kid and be Rust. That would have made more sense. Anyway, Rust. I liked it enough. I think that if I had audio description, the grade would be more firm and I would have a more positive grade, but this would be fresh for me and this would be like a recommend. If you're blind, it's a do what you want, you know? It's your money. I can understand the desire to want to watch it. I just watch everything. So I've already seen, it's like the beginning of May and I'm almost at 100 movies released in 2025. So last year I had 455 movies released within the calendar year. That's not even rewatches or from other years. So because I watch everything to try to tell you whether or not you should, this isn't weird for me. So yes, you will miss things. There are giant sections of the film that are gunfights, which is uncomfortable to think about a gunfight in Rust. but you can also understand why guns were very important and why people should have paid better attention to them. Um, and It's a sweeping Western, and I would have loved for those shots where nobody's talking and we're just getting landscape. I would have loved to know what it was that Helena was capturing, was shooting shots. So I've heard it's beautifully shot. I've heard some other people talk about Rust, and they all compliment her cinematography. I don't know anybody who's not going to compliment her cinematography on the other side of that, but at the same time, I have no problem with complimenting her cinematography because I think there are enough other pieces. I'm actually kind of surprised when I kind of heard about Rust and I looked at the cast. It didn't sound like the kind of movie that was going to go anywhere to begin with. It kind of felt like everything happened for a movie that was always destined to be video on demand. But there are enough things here that the kind of movies that I've seen sort of shout out as video on demand releases, I think this is better than that. There are actually strong performances here. There's some good dialogue. There's some interesting scenes and moments and beats. There's a great score. I mean, there are these moments here that suggest that Rust might have, if nothing had happened to it, have done just fine as a smaller indie Western in the same vein as maybe like the one that Viggo Mortensen did last year, whose name escapes me. But yeah, it could have been something like that. Anyway, Rust is probably like a B plus. It's probably be like a B plus or maybe a B, somewhere around in there. If I was giving it a grade, but I can't because again, no audio description. But yeah, that's where it is in my head. Anyway, there's just a little tag if you stay all the way through the credits that just says like, about Helena. That's all it is. It's about 10 seconds of your life if you want to stay through the credits. So that's it. Thanks for watching. Thanks for subscribing, and I will see you guys on the other side.